Right now on Tech Radio, the EU has a Trump card.
Hi, I'm Artemis. I am a computer-generated AI voice, and you're listening to Tech Radio.
Every week online and on air with RT Radio, we bring you the latest in tech from Ireland and across the world. This is episode 1065, looking at the 7 biggest stories of the week, including the latest on how the trade wars will affect tech. We're not impressed with Jeff Bezos' latest rocket mission. And we now have an Irishman on the board of Meta with Mark Zuckerberg. Let's get to it.
From TechCentral.ie, this is Tech Radio with Dusty Rhodes and Niall Kitson.
I'm Dusty. Joining me as always, our editor-in-chief, Niall Kitson, the man with the finger on the pulse of technology across the globe.
Yeah, a lot of fingers, Dusty. That's a lot of fingers.
Let's start off with tariffs and the latest on how they're going to affect tech. Trump had announced after the show last week, I think, he says, all the China tariffs, blah, 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 except phones, of course, which is great news for Tim Apple.
Except, phones, consoles, computers, all the wonderful consumer electronics he talked about with Jason, that, what's going to happen to these devices that we can't live without. Well, apparently they are, not without tariffs. I mean, there's a 10% tariff applying to everything across the world. Yeah. And Trump said, okay, no, we're going to go 20% on it. Now, I'm not sure if that's the 10% tariff for everybody plus 10%. They don't know themselves. I mean,
I was about to say, I could look it up, but in the few hours it'll take to get this podcast out to the world, it will most likely have changed.
It will have changed. So the current thinking from the White House as we're recording is that no, consumer electronics are not off the table. They have just been moved into what they're calling a different bucket of tariffs. So they've gone from the exempt status to the we're looking at it status. So whatever way it's going to be, there's going to be an extra 10% in the States. Okay, get used to it.
I think the one thing that is for sure is that the world is on pause at the moment. That's the way I see it, the financial world, I should say, because it came out with this shock at 25%, which I'm sure is a negotiating technique, okay? So then they'll take 90 days and they'll, kind of to figure it out properly, and then they'll come out with what the tariff is actually going to be, which is most likely going to be more than what it is at the moment in the other bucket, as you call it. Prices are going up one way or the other. On tech. Well, I mean, everywhere.
As we're speaking, tariffs against goods in China are 245%. Trump has effectively shut off the Chinese market. The States represents, I think it's 15% of China's exports. They've said, look, we can suck it up. We can live without you guys. And they are the second biggest economic power in the world. And all their manufacturing is responsible for luxury goods. There's some great videos going around X at the moment on TikTok where you've got Chinese influencers going, hey, you want to see how Gucci stuff is made? Well, it's actually made by this company in China. And here you go. Yeah. So there's some good entertainment to be had on that. So yeah. I can't see 245% sticking for any length of time. I mean, once you get above a certain point, it becomes irrelevant. People just aren't going to order from it.
We don't want to, we're not a financial podcast, so we won't get into this. One thing that you mentioned, that the United States is 15% or something like that of China's exports total. Yeah. So it's kind of like, I had seen that figure that the United States it's a huge consumer market, but it's still like less than 20% of the global market. The EU is a bigger market than the US.
So that's something that hasn't sank in the US.
I think so, because everybody's like, no, this is the be all and end all because blah, 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 whatever. It's like kind of very much when you take that into consideration, you go, well, okay, well, that's one country and that's what they're doing. And I keep thinking about the EU. It's kind of like if I was running an Irish company and I was sending stuff into the States, I would be working really hard now at looking at other markets or doubling down on the other markets. That's the way I'd be looking at it. Anyway, listen, what do we know? What's interesting is that I think this must be a nightmare scenario for Apple.
I'm listening.
Their share price has gone down 25% since Christmas. That's a fair old jump, and it's gone down 15% since the start of the month, since all of this tariff nonsense started. They could absorb the price. What are they going to do when they launch the iPhones in September? Is it going to go up dramatically for US users and stay at a certain price for the world? Or, knowing Apple, okay, whatever price it is in the US is the price it will be everywhere else.
Yeah, I think that's what's going to happen.
So we shall wait and see.
And we are actually seeing it in another story that you want to chat about with a Japanese brand, Sony.
Oh, of course. Yeah. With the PlayStation. And they've jacked up the price. They've jacked up the price. Where is it? It's everywhere else in the world except the United States.
Yeah.
All right. They've put another 50 quid, certainly in Canada, that they have on it.
Which is about 10% of the price. So they've upped their price by about 10%.
Yeah. And I think it is to do with the tariffs, and they've done it globally.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. Sorry, you threw me there by mentioning Sony, because I had been thinking about the EU, because they have a nuclear option, if you like, all right, on what they're going to do. And that is that they can kill services. And here's the tech angle on this, right, is this trade war is about goods, manufactured things made in factories and all that kind of stuff, all right? And he's talking about trade imbalance. So essentially what's happening is a lot more stuff is going from the EU into the States than we would buy from the States. So there's an imbalance, all right? However, when you start taking services into account, okay, all your Meta advertising, your Google services, Google Workspace, Microsoft, yada, 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 and so on and so forth, all right? All of a sudden, it's balanced. It's nicely balanced.
The EU economy and the US economy, I mean, manufacturing is a very small percentage of what both of us do. They're service economies. I mean, software as a service, cloud services. I mean, this is how we use technology now. Yeah. And services have been very conveniently excluded from tariffs at the moment. And it's, if you were to say, okay, we're going to charge 10%, we're going to charge X amount to Google for operating Gmail in the EU. You are going to get some very ticked off phone calls to the White House very quickly.
You get a very ticked off phone call from me.
Well, do you know what? When you think about it, that photo of Zuckerberg, Bezos, Sundar Pichai, Elon Musk at the Trump inauguration, all of those men have lost money since Trump came into power. And if you think of that
photo of the time, did any of them look happy?
Well, they did. They looked delighted with themselves, but they've all lost money, and that's the only thing they understand.
Yeah.
Well,
they've all lost
probably
a lot
code,
of money.
But they've all lost a lot of money.
Yeah, the EU has been talking about 2 nuclear options, and apparently the legislation is already in place. They can do 2 things. Number one is they can put tariff on US services. Okay. They could also kill the services. They could prevent Google from operating within the EU. They could prevent Microsoft from operating within the EU. Now, I mean, clearly is very much a nuclear option, but they won't be the first to do it, because in China, they're already insulated from this happening.
Well, yeah, and what helped in China was that their own Chinese services are built in a bubble. They're not reliant on international trade. When you've got a market of 1 billion people, you don't need to worry about going international. If you look at what the corollaries are, I mean, if you want to search something, you use Baidu, because you can't use Google. They don't have Facebook. We know that Zuckerberg et al. Was courting the Chinese government in that recent book. We know for social, the Chinese use WeChat, they use Weibo. TikTok, of course, is owned by ByteDance, which is a Chinese company. And there's another network called Little Red Book that I think we've talked about before, but I can't remember offhand. And of course, and for commerce, they've got Alibaba instead of Amazon. Like they have a version for everything we have.
Yeah. So
and it's not reliant on the US at all.
Yeah, and I bet that those Chinese apps would be delighted to make themselves more popular in the EU. As I say, I mean, it's a nuclear option. It's there. It's very interesting times that we live in, Niall. Very interesting times that we live in. Well, that's enough Trump time for this week. Let's move on to other stories. And Jeff Bezos and an Irishman on the Meta board both sound like, kind of, yay, brilliant. Maybe not. Katy Perry, all right, in a story we're labeling Greetings, Loved One. Let's take a journey. Why are we calling it that now?
Yeah, it's the first line to California Girls. Because she's a California girl, Dusty. Don't you keep up?
I do. I had been thinking of Firework because literally that's around about a paper bag flying up in the sky, which is essentially what Jeff Bezos' rocket is. It's 11 minutes of fun. Back down again.
That's a good strap line if ever there was one.
It's 11 minutes of fun. and when you look at it, what does it remind you of? Let's not go there. Katy Perry and a whole load of ladies. Gayle King, who is a friend of Oprah. Lauren Sanchez, who is Jeff Bezos's. They are officially engaged now, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
All right. And she said she would not get glam before the flight.
Who would not get glam before the flight?
And I think what Lauren Sanchez said.
Yeah, that's what Lauren Sanchez said. And when you see the photo of, I think it's 6 women in total, 6 or 7, went on this mission, and their version of an astronaut's uniform or flight suit is basically a kind of a cat suit, kind of a glamorous look. If you will. Didn't seem very functional to me, but hey. Neither did talk of wearing makeup in space. Doesn't sound terribly functional to me, but hey, if that's living your best life, who am I to criticize? But we will anyway. How does that sound?
We will criticize. Off you go.
Okay. Well, first of all, though, shout out to Amanda Nguyen, first Vietnamese woman in space. So, firsts are always to be, it's important to be recognized. And by all accounts, a very formidable and impressive woman. So, let's mark the breach on that one. However, another lovely quote from Katy Perry showing the seriousness of this mission. I'm using mission loosely. She said, "We are going to put the ass in Astronaut." So tell me this, Dusty. Given what we know of astronauts, is Katy Perry as good as Chris Hadfield?
Oh, of course not. None of them are real astronauts, okay? It depends on how you define astronaut. If you define astronaut as somebody who has gone above the Kármán line, all right, and the Kármán line is kind of like the internationally recognized border between the Earth's atmosphere and in space, okay? So if you define somebody who has gone to space as an astronaut, well, then they are astronauts. I wouldn't define them as astronauts because literally they're just they're passengers on a roller coaster ride. That's it. All right.
Yeah.
Whereas I would define an astronaut as somebody who trains, knows what they're doing. They're going up to space for a particular reason or for, as you said, an actual mission.
Yeah.
So no, this is just a bunch of ladies. I'm guessing that they all paid their ticket themselves.
Aha, there you would be wrong.
There
you would be wrong.
Okay, go on.
They
can all afford it.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Katy Perry is worth like 350 million or something like that. Yeah. She is fine. But the crew was handpicked by Miss Sanchez. Of course, dressed by Miss Sanchez. It's basically her taking her mates up into space and her fiance footing the bill. That's basically what this is. This was not a journey of discovery. This is what happened, actually. And I was kind of weirded out by this a little bit. Katy Perry brought up a Daisy. Apparently she has a child called Daisy with Orlando Bloom. The amount of celebrity gossip I've had to train myself up on to talk about this story, it's just ridiculous. I mean, I didn't know Taylor Swift had a beef with Katy Perry. You know, this is the kind of stuff I've had to learn.
Welcome to the world.
Yeah. So she held up a Daisy, a nice sign to the camera, you know, thinking of you, child. Yep. Mm-hmm. In a sense, maybe you're in space with me. And then she held up what looked like a butterfly. Right. This was actually a listing of the set list to go with her current tour, but the camera was not good. So all you saw was Katy Perry holding up like a butterfly, looked like a coaster, with some blurred text on it. You know, she was advertising her tour. That was what she was up to.
Yeah.
A bit of marketing.
Yeah, and you know what? It just, I didn't get any good feels from that mission, as you say in inverted commas, or I wasn't impressed with the crew, as you call them in inverted commas. Do you know what I mean?
Well,
it was
passengers, not a crew. That's the word.
There we go. What a great word. And actually, do you know what? That applies for, and it's not just this particular trip. It's for anybody who goes up in that, they're a passenger. Yeah. They're all just passengers.
Well, I tell you, there's a funny thing, just as an addendum, swirling around X is a conspiracy theory saying that thing never went up in the first place because there's no atmospheric marks on the paint. There's no evidence of re-entry. Of course, the answer is because they didn't go up that high. I mean, the Kármán line is what? I think it's like 80. It's 80 miles above the surface. They went 62.
No, it's I know this for a fact. It's 100 kilometers above the surface of the Earth. That's where the Kármán line is. Unless you're an American and it's 80 kilometers above the surface of the Earth.
80 miles.
No, 80 kilometers.
Kilometers. Okay. So why is it?
They just measure it differently.
They just measure it differently. Okay. Well, yeah. Fair enough.
But the internationally accepted standard by lots of countries is 100 kilometers. It's easy to remember. It's easy to remember.
Right. Okay. So they didn't even go up that high.
Oh, I think they did. I think they did. Definitely, yeah. Because unless, of course, you're going to develop this conspiracy theory into the whole moon landings didn't happen, all right? But they did have video, and you can see the ladies floating around and doing all that kind of stuff, and looking out of the window, it certainly looked like you could see the Earth and the shape of the Earth, and it looked like they were high enough, all right.
Okay. Rich people doing dumb rich people things.
Dumb rich people things that we will never get to do. Nope. Now, speaking of the opposite of dumb rich people, Patrick Collison, all right, from, I always say Limerick. They're from where?
Tipperary. But he went to college in Limerick.
Ah, okay, so that's why I think. Okay, so the two brothers, and they won the Young Scientist exhibition. They went off to form Stripe, and now that is one of the biggest card processing services in the world. And the pair of them are multi-millionaires, billionaires, whatever. Brilliant. A success story. I love hearing their names. I love going, there's a couple of lads who have done us proud up until this week.
Well, I mean, Patrick and John Collison are a very formidable duo. I mean, they're very well accomplished, know exactly what they're doing. And Stripe is a successful company, not immune to what happens in Silicon Valley. Nope. I mean, unfortunately, they had to lay off about 300 people last year, 3.5% of their workforce. The exact same thing that happened across the tech sector during COVID. They were oversubscribed with customers. Then COVID ended. Everybody went back to work, and all of a sudden it was, we're not bringing in we'd plateaued in terms of the number of customers we could bring in. So they had to let people go. So Patrick Collison has joined the board of Meta. On one level, Yes, it's great to see an Irishman involved at such a high level in technology. I mean, you're gung ho about this. As is my want, are slightly more skeptical.
All right, I just kind of think Meta to me is. I can't say it on even on a podcast, but anyway, it wouldn't be one of my favorite companies. I wouldn't be terribly impressed with them at all, and I just think it's such a shame to see somebody who's done so well and is such a proud Irishman in my books go into the middle of that den.
Okay, well let's parse this out because this is important,
and it gets worse when you hear why he's there.
Well, I mean, this is speculation on my part, but
okay,
if you were to look at it, you'd go, yeah, probably. So what has happened over the last few months is that Mark Zuckerberg came out and said, I want to see more masculine energy in Facebook. Again, this is sort of the kind of nonsense machismo that has been emboldened by Trump. We've also seen UFC founder Dana White being added to the board of Meta. I'm sure he brings a wealth of expertise to the company. And now we have, yeah, I mean, come on. And now we have Trump's former national security advisor, and that was a position that didn't exist before she got it, Dina Powell-McCormick. So basically, Trump has inserted a surrogate into the board of Meta. And what has Zuckerberg done? Well, he's effectively balanced it out by brought in somebody new or somebody with standing from the tech industry, which is where Patrick Collison comes in. So it's almost like the Supreme Court in the States, you know, the way that they're always obsessed with, you know, the liberal conservative split. Well, if you're looking at boards, we are going to have to look at every one of them and go, okay, that is politically related, that's a vanity appointment, or that is actually related to technology and business. And I think, you know, you will be able to look at boards and go, yeah, there's a reason why that person is there. And
I think that's terrible. Yeah, I think that I know we're talking about Patrick, but I had similar circumstance with a particular company, and we were advised professionally that it would look better if we had one or two females on the board.
Right.
Now this is years ago. All right. So I was going, okay, great. So I went looking for the best human beings that would be able to fulfill the role and bring their expertise. There were very few pickings, and when we approached them, they were all way too busy sitting on other boards because they're rare. All right.
Right.
And we eventually had to get two people to sit on the board who were completely inappropriate, but simply for the gender balance. All right. So it didn't actually approve it on a practical basis. But then again, you know, the world's got to change, and you've got to, you know, kind of, if you can't see it, you can't be it. So,
yeah,
you know.
Well, I agree with that sentiment. All right, but yeah, we've got to look at the makeup of boards, specifically in American companies now, through a new lens, which is unfortunate, but that's what it is.
There you go. Listen, a ton of other stories to get through, and we're running out of time. So let's fly through if we can. Cybertruck, how are the orders doing for Mr. Musk? Okay,
January and February, 2,619 sold in the States. We were told initially there were 1 million expressions of interest, 1 million reservations, they call it. There's 50,000 of them on the road. And of course, we know that they're all being recalled at the moment because there's a software. Was this one a brake pads issue? They've been recalled like 5 times at this stage. That, and they have also released a budget model worth $70,000. Budget. And apparently on the quiet, a lot of people on the assembly lines have been moved from the Cybertruck over to the Model Y, which still does very well for them. However, if you want to look at a silver lining, the Cybertruck is still America's most popular electric truck.
Yay. All right. 4chan, been running for a long time. I believe it's come to an end.
Well, much bigger story, especially when it comes to the cultural footprint of the internet. All your memes belong to 4chan. If you know the guy looking at the other woman and his girlfriend being shocked, if you know that picture, it's from 4chan. If you know the dog sitting in the burning building, it's from 4chan. If you know QAnon, if you know Anonymous, if you know Pizzagate, all of this came from 4chan, which started out as an image sharing board for anime fans. It is now, well, was until this week, an all-purpose message board. And what happened was that it was hacked by a user from a rival message board called Soyjack. And it was discovered that, we'll say, security precautions on 4chan were not quite what they could be. Apparently it was running on 10-year-old software and was quite easily compromised. So we have the email addresses of all the mods or janitors that they call them, were leaked. It was erroneously said that an awful lot of them were .gov email addresses, which was total bunk, because the whole thing was, it's been infiltrated by the US government. We knew it. No evidence of that. So you might remember, I think it was, 2000 and... Let's see, the founder Moot stood down in 2015. It was founded in 2003. And at one stage, he was named the most influential in Time's annual poll, right? And of course, the poll was hacked. So it was just lots of 4chan people voted for their guy. But Time, to their credit, they actually posted him as, the most influential person. Maybe there was half an argument for it at the time. So what happens now? I saw a couple of very interesting posts on X about this. One of which referred to 4chan as a containment facility. Which I thought was absolutely hilarious and brilliant. It's like, okay, we've now said it's like that scene in Ghostbusters. All the ghosts are out of the trap. Where are they going to go? Are they going to infect the rest of the internet? Probably go to X, and I'm sure quite a few of them are up on Reddit as well. I'd say there's quite a few people cross-post on 4chan and Reddit, or maybe I've opened a can of worms there. But Moot stepped down in 2015, replaced by 2chan founder. 2chan actually was ripped off by 4chan, or not so much ripped off, but
2chan was ripped off by 4chan,
and of course, when there was 4chan, there was also 8chan, which was a free speech absolutist version. That's not to say that free speech wasn't pretty much absolute on 4chan in the first place. Anyway, that's as much as we can say about that, because I think we're stuck for time. But RIP.
Grant, final story. And actually, do you know what a pleasure it is to say, and also some AI news. There was a time where that's all we could talk about. There was so much going on. OpenAI wants to get out of just being AI. They want to get into social media. Pray tell.
Yeah, and when I heard this initially, I was like, this is actually a good move in theory, right? Because what is OpenAI and all AI companies? What is the first criticism that's leveled against them?
That they are training on information that they don't own. So it's either copyrighted material or videos or books, or they're training on what people are saying on Reddit or social media platforms.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I see where you're going.
Yeah. So instead of using other people's stuff, legally or illegally, allegedly, why not build your own social network and have people just volunteer this stuff to you? And to make things a little bit spicier, what they're interested in particular isn't so much text inputs, because they think we've got that nailed at this stage. What they're interested in is image inputs and the kind of pictures people are using with ChatGPT 4o. So in the sense that, people went mad with the Studio Ghibli memes, and I went mad consequently because of it, they are looking for more of this kind of thing. What are people using our technology for? What can we get better at serving back to people? And so on and so forth.
But surely they are able to train the LMM on the questions that people are asking of ChatGPT. It's almost kind of like a circular thing. OpenAI going into social media? I don't know. Actually, now that reminds me, Meta AI has been making the news this week because they are Meta are. You can't get any more social media than Meta, okay? And now they're into the AI game, and I think making a complete mockery of it, absolute rubbish. They have said that they also need to train on data and information, stuff like that, and they are able to do so now in the EU, where if you are posting or commenting on Facebook or on Instagram, they will be able to use that data to train their Meta AI. But they won't use data from WhatsApp because the messages are encrypted end to end, so they just can't see it, allegedly. And then the other thing which I think is interesting this time around is what Meta are doing. Do you remember the last time Meta, the EU are making us do stuff, so okay, boom, out of the blue, then you log into Facebook and it goes, okay, so do you want to agree to us using all of your data for advertising purposes, or do you just want to give us a tenner a month and we won't bother? Yep. Make a decision now. All right. They have learned from that. So number one is you will be able to opt out of Meta or Facebook or Instagram using your data in this way, and you will also have a period of time to consider it. No, as in that they won't say there and then you have to make a decision here. I do, in all fairness, think that Meta AI needs training, and I think it needs a lot of training.
Well, you've used it, so tell me about your experience.
Let me define that, right? I've been trying to use it, okay? Because it's popped up in WhatsApp, and I'm kind of, all right, let's see what the hell this thing can do, So I said, can you generate me an image of blah, 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 blah? And it said, what did it say? Sorry, I can't create images for you yet. Well... That's no good. Then I said, summarize messages from the past week in blah, blah, blah group, which I have. And it goes, I'm happy to help. However, I don't have access to your messages. If you would like to summarize the messages yourself, it's like, what's the point of having an AI if it goes, you do that yourself? Yeah. It's like bananas. So I said, I said, what useful things can you do? And then it tells me all the things that I can do in the WhatsApp business app. And I said, I didn't ask him in the business app. I just want to know what you could do here. And it said, sorry, I'm reading it as I go on at the moment. It said, you can interact with me, answering questions on topics, generating text and creative writing and translation, summarizing content. It's like, these are all the things that I do with other AIs. All right. Why do I want to do that? It's the text messaging, to compose something or whatever. I said, how can I use Meta AI in other chats, for example, to draft replies or to create emojis? It says, to use, you can't directly integrate it into your conversations. So anyway, I was getting very frustrated, and eventually I just went, would you like some feedback on this? And it said, I'd love to hear your feedback. So I said, based on all of your answers above, Meta AI serves no purpose and is effectively useless. How do I uninstall it? To which it replied, I apologize for the frustration. Meta AI is integrated into WhatsApp, so you can't uninstall it. You want to take a 1,500 quid smartphone and throw it at the wall. Okay, I'm back with a little bit of good news to wrap us up. a little bit of good news to wrap us up for the week. Actually, this is kind of a little bit of Elon Musk good news for him as well. If you are heading to the States and you're going to be flying from Dublin with American Airlines from next January, you will have free Wi-Fi on board. Yay!
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they've just done it. Now, a lot of airlines are doing this, but they've just announced a deal with AT&T, and they're going to be using Starlink for the service. So when you're going transatlantic and stuff like that, I've done it before, years ago actually, on Aer Lingus. Yes, I did. So, I mean, American Airlines are way behind. America, and actually, I would say in general, American Airlines, all of them, Delta, all of them are way behind the rest of the world. But it's really interesting when you're flying somewhere and you're kind of going, what was the last time? Oh yeah, I was coming back from Dubai, and I was kind of like, yeah, just past Athens, should be another 3 hours or so. Bad text messages. The world is just bananas. Anyway, there we go. Niall, thanks for keeping us up to date with all the news this week.
Share the knowledge and invite a friend to listen. Search Apple, Spotify, or YouTube for Tech Radio Ireland.
If you own and actually use a Fitbit, Whoop, or a smartwatch with Google Fit or Apple Health Kit, then you're probably obsessed with the insights that you get on your step count and your calories burned or any number of daily goals to help you live a better life for longer. But let's not forget that there is more to health than just physical activity. Dr. Brendan Darby is Chief Executive Officer and co-founder of Marama Labs, and he had a chat with Niall Kitson about how insurers and employers can use data to look after everyone from the shop floor to the boardroom.
Brendan, you've had a little bit of a journey from New Zealand to Ireland. So tell us a little bit about your career so far and the company's trajectory.
Yeah, absolutely, Niall. So I'm from Ireland originally, from Dublin, and I studied physics in DCU. And then in 2012, moved out to New Zealand, to Wellington, which is the capital of New Zealand, south of the North Island, to do my PhD at Victoria University of Wellington under Professor Eric LaRue, who was my PhD supervisor. There's a group there is known as the Raman Lab. So they specialize in a type of optical spectroscopy, as we call it, an optical technique, and we're world leaders in that field. So I went to New Zealand to do my PhD there in that space. So I spent 4 years studying the physics of nanoparticles and the optics and all of that fun stuff for 4 years there. And at the tail end of that, we invented the technology that is behind what we do at Marama Labs. So then spent, invented that apparatus in the lab, and then went to, look at where this technology could be applied. So I spent a couple of years then in New Zealand commercializing that technology, getting it out of the lab and looking for applications, using some funding from the New Zealand ecosystem there, to the point of spinning out the company in 2019 via some early stage investment, and grew the team then in New Zealand to a reasonable size. At which point then we were originally looking into the fermentation space, particularly in winemaking, applying our technology for following the quality of wine, which is obviously a big market and a big industry for New Zealand on the doorstep there. We kind of considered that as the beachhead market, the initial applications for the technology. But I guess we always envisioned that this would be applied into wider markets and bigger markets, such as pharmaceutical manufacturing and life sciences. And so, being from Ireland, we were at a great point where we had, I guess, commercialize the technology in the wine industry, and we're at a point where we were now looking for new applications. And like Ireland, obviously being a hotbed for life sciences and pharmaceutical manufacturing, I moved back then to Dublin with my family. We had a boy in New Zealand during COVID, and we moved back then to Dublin. My wife's also Irish. And at that point, we kind of set on the journey then to start to explore new applications into the life sciences and pharmaceutical space. So that was 2022. Fast forward to today, we've now raised 2 rounds of funding from institutional investors here in Ireland, in addition to investors in New Zealand who continue to support the company. And we've opened the lab here at DCU Alpha, actually, which is a nice kind of, I guess, circuitous story from where I came from. We're now we've opened our life sciences applications lab in DCU Alpha down the road from the main campus, and that's where we're basing our applications development for the life sciences space. So yeah, it's been a long journey. I guess 13, 14 years in the making, from Dublin to New Zealand and back again, but very exciting now to have company in New Zealand and the company here in Ireland exploring new exciting applications.
It's interesting that you started looking at wine and now you're looking at pharmaceuticals. We're still very much in the finding out phase about COVID, a fairly definitive experience of our generation. At what point did you sort of look back and go, actually, there's real applications here, perhaps in identifying medicines and identifying vaccines?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, COVID's been really interesting. There's two aspects of COVID. There's the actual mRNA, which is the therapeutic, that creates the efficacy to target the COVID response. But the actual, I guess, somewhat revolution here and what made it so effective was the way in which you deliver the mRNA therapeutic to the body. So mRNA itself will actually degrade in the body quite quickly if you inject it directly. And so what has enabled it to be really effective is the delivery of what we call nanomedicines. So these are called lipid nanoparticles effectively. So they're like tiny little balls of fat made up of lipids. And you basically put the mRNA inside those balls. They're about 80 nanometers. And that's what goes into the body. That protects the mRNA itself. It shields it and allows the particle to basically deliver the mRNA into the cells, and it gets released inside the cells. These are a real revolution, and there's some really interesting chemistry underneath that kind of protects them in the body but gets them into the cells. And that's what makes mRNA therapeutics really, really effective, and why we were able to tackle the COVID pandemic so effectively through the Moderna vaccine, the Pfizer vaccine, etc. But it turns out that one of the challenges with those, lipid nanoparticles being present, so don't want to get too technical on this, is that they effectively stop you from being able to see how much of the mRNA is present. So analyzing those samples in the lab when you're a Moderna or a Pfizer, et cetera, when you're developing that therapeutic, the steps to quantify the amount of the drug available are quite laborious at the moment because the particles themselves shield it. And so what we developed at Marama Labs is a technique that can, kind of see through what we call cloudiness. Cloudiness in a sample or a liquid is a real challenge to analyze the chemical content. And the technique we invented, which is called the cloud spec, can kind of see through this cloudiness effectively and retrieve the chemical information of the sample. And so when you then see this COVID vaccine development, you have this kind of perfect problem fit with our technology where producers like Moderna, et cetera, are trying to find rapid ways to, quantify and characterize the therapeutics they're developing. And we found a way that we can quantify this concentration of the drug really quickly. We kind of can do it in about 10 seconds compared to what takes about 2 hours. So I guess the timing was really serendipitous in that COVID, accelerated the development of these types of therapeutics. But now it's really interesting in that moving beyond COVID, you're actually seeing mRNA and lipid nanoparticles being applied now to, a wide variety of areas from oncology to gene editing. So actually vaccines were really just the start, but they provided, if you will, the baseline framework and the funding to enable companies now to invest further. So we're really excited because mRNA and lipid nanoparticle space is really exploding off the back of COVID. So it's exciting to have gone from wine to be able to apply the technology to this new space.
The pharmaceutical industry is quite, I don't want to say notorious, but it does require an awful lot of checks and balances, an awful lot of testing before a drug gets from the ideation stage to the shelves. In developing relationships with the pharmaceutical sector, did you find a similar level of, I suppose for want of a better term, skepticism about the device, or did you find it quite a smooth process of getting the meetings, having the discussions, and then having the device integrated?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, one of the beauties of our technology is it's based on a technique that we call UV-vis spectroscopy. So that's ultraviolet visible spectroscopy, and basically it shines a spectrum of light from the ultraviolet out to the visible through a sample, and you look at how the sample absorbs that, and you can tell certain molecules will absorb at certain wavelengths of light. And that technique itself has actually been around for 60, 70 years. The first UV-Vis spectrometers were invented in the 50s, and they're ubiquitous in analytical chemistry, pharmaceuticals, and it's a giant market. And anyone who works in analytical chemistry or pharma knows what a UV-Vis instrument is and knows how they work and understands the technique very, very well. And they're used for release testing and certification testing all around the world, not just in pharma, almost every industry from a chemistry perspective. And so our technique is a new innovation on that type of instrumentation technique. And so when we approach customers like that, there's already an existing understanding of what UV-Vis can do, but we overcome a challenge that those existing technologies have when your sample is cloudy. So that gets us in a really, good starting point where we have this shared understanding of why UV can work, and they're already applying UV-Vis in non-cloudy systems. So it's a good shared understanding there, But to then, as you say, this is a new technology. We're a new company. How can we validate this for what will be ultimately very valuable tests and crucial tests that pharmaceutical manufacturers will be implementing? So what we've done, we took a very concerted effort over the last kind of 12 to 18 months to work with partners, both in the academic and research space and in the commercial space, to validate the technology against reference methods and, prove that it can show and produce the same results in the same precision and the same accuracy against the existing methods that the industry is utilizing. And we've got some peer-reviewed papers now that are just being released that we've done with various institutions and commercial partners. So, for the pharma industry, you have to go down to that journey to validate a new technology and prove its efficacy, and that has gone very well. So, that's been really how we've approached engaging with customers. And ultimately, there will be some customers who are willing to look at a new innovative technology and take it in and test it. And it's those, innovators that we've worked with to validate it.
And have you been surprised by the kind of institutions, companies, and even individual researchers that are interested in the device?
We've really tried to, identify who the leaders in the space are. So, we've been working with, for example, Nibert out in UCD. We've been collaborating with Professor Stephen Ferguson there. Been working with UCC down in Cork. We've been working with Professor Yvonne Perry in the University of Strathclyde, as well as, commercial end users too. And, all of these names are, very well regarded in the space, and will always adopt and look at new technology. So we kind of went through that process of reaching out with a new technology that hadn't been developed yet for the space. And, you go and do a demo and you sort of run some samples with people and you can see the initial results, and then you start to go on a partnership journey with them. And we've been surprised, I suppose, with the value proposition, if you will, in terms of the existing technique, how much of a headache it is for end users. It is a really laborious method that has to be used at the moment. And it seems that our technique works very well and, solves a pain for many of those end users. So we've been really surprised in some ways and pleased to see how, utilized it is.
And of course, when it comes to developing any product, one of the challenges is integrating feedback as soon as possible. Have you been surprised by the kind of problems people have come to you, whether it's being from a physical perspective or a user experience perspective?
Yeah, it's a great point. As I say, we've actually had an early access program open since June. So interestingly, the hardware comes from effectively the wine space. And then we've taken that hardware and re-engineered it slightly to be more applicable to the specific application in lipid nanoparticles. I think what we've been surprised about is, how much the software that we've developed has been aligned with the end user kind of workflow. But then, we've had to learn a lot about the different types of samples that end users have. So one company will be developing one lipid nanoparticle formulation with an mRNA type therapeutic, and another will be developing something different. So the surprising piece has been kind of how we take our software and adapt it to that workflow that meets the needs of different customers. So that's been the point of the early access program, is really that we can get samples and learn workflows from different users who are doing slightly different things with the same kind of end goal. But I guess one of the things we've been really surprised about is that some users have actually started to adopt our technique as their internal method quite quickly after demoing the instrument, even though it's not commercially might not be commercially ready yet. It started to be adopted internally as a check in comparison to the reference method. So I suppose the goes back to the idea that the technique is very simple, and it's very well understood because of that existing presence of UV vis spectroscopy. So because people understand it, they see the result on the screen, and they can kind of, in some ways, get trust from it quite quickly. But at the same time, we've still had to do a lot of validation to ensure that it's repeatable and it can be applied more widely.
And that was Dr. Brendan Darby, CEO and co-founder of Marama Labs, chatting with Niall Kitson.
This is Tech Radio with Dusty Rhodes and Niall Kitson.
That's it for our show this week. Do check out some stories that we have online for you, including...
Yeah, we've got Chinese hackers targeting Windows systems using Brickstorm. Apple's Vision Pro makes an unlikely return in 2 models. And Nvidia advances its plans to start making chips in the US.
We have those stories and more for you online at techessential.ie. And Niall, I have to ask, for the week that's in it, on the website, are there any Easter eggs?
Of course. You just have to be clever.
Of course. That's a no. We're back again next Friday with a brand new show online and on RT Radio 1 Extra, of course. Do remember to share our podcast with a friend. Just tell them to look up Tech Radio Ireland on Apple, Spotify, and now also on YouTube. Until next time, from myself, Dusty Rhodes, and from Niall Kitson, have a wonderful Easter. Talk to you soon.
Remember, you can get the latest Irish tech news with hourly updates, daily newsletters, and more at our website, techcentral.ie. Share the knowledge and invite a friend to listen. Search Apple, Spotify, or YouTube for Tech Radio Ireland, or listen with RTE Radio 1 Extra. Tech Radio is produced by dustpod.io for techcentral.ie. From me, Artemis, live long and prosper.